What's up, gentlemen? This is Rising Phoenix Podcast, a podcast about how to rise up after your divorce. I'm your host, Michael Rhodes. Let's get into it. Joining me today is the first return guest to the podcast, Mr. Anthony, episode 8, I think.
8 or 9, one of the two.
I can never remember, but yeah, the first return guest. I'm excited to have him. So let's Anthony, let's dive right into it. But instead of sort of telling your story, let's just sort of I guess it's kind of the same thing, but let's recap a little bit. Who filed, how long ago, all those kinds of things.
Right. I was the one that filed for my divorce. I filed, it was December 2019, and divorce was final March of 2020.
So it wasn't relatively quick then, I would say, at least less than
a year. It was just before COVID became the big issue that now, because coincidentally I had a friend that was going through a divorce the same time, and her divorce got delayed because the courts were shutting down and everything, and I literally just got it done in the nick of time.
Wow. So let's talk about and obviously people can go back and listen, but let's talk about some of the things that you struggle with sort of post-divorce. You can either start when you filed or once the divorce was finalized, but what were some of those struggles that you encountered?
Yeah, absolutely. If it's cool with you, I'll just talk about the struggles like throughout the whole journey.
Sure. Yeah.
It's weird. So every once in a while, I could see something or hear something that will remind me of the relationship that I had with my ex-wife. And then unfortunately, bad memories will start to come back. I don't want to say it's like PTSD, but kind of, I guess, similar in a way. That's definitely one struggle. And then, with that comes learning how to process those moments, learning how to process those emotions, just bottling those emotions in. But it's a struggle, even now, a little over 2 years later, I still get those moments where it could be a fight or just something that was said that will creep in my head, and then I can internally start to feel something different. So just learning how to process those emotions, it's definitely a struggle. Another struggle that I had was when I was going through my divorce, my confidence in myself was at an all-time low. I didn't feel I was worth it. I didn't feel I was good enough for anybody, for anyone. I was at my lowest point, so to speak. And every once in a while, I still have confidence issues still. I'm my own worst critic, which can, I guess, in a way be good at times, because it can push yourself to do better and to be better.
Sure.
But sometimes I'm a little too hard on myself. And then those feelings of lack of confidence, like I'm not good enough for anyone or anything, come creeping back full force. And then, like another thing that I struggle with is still believing that, love can exist, that a loving, positive relationship with a great foundation can exist. As I've said in group, I've been with a lady now for a while, but we have our moments just like any other couple would.
Sure.
And it's tough when we have those moments. Sometimes I'll creep back in those old thoughts of, okay, is it me? Am I the one screwing this up? Am I not really good enough for this relationship? So, just learning to accept and believe that, you can have a loving, positive relationship. It's just, it's going to take work on from both parties.
Yeah.
And then I will say the last struggle that I've had is using my support system, whether if it's someone or something, because every once in a while I'll have a bad memory or I'll go down a bad trip of memory lane, and every once in a while I won't process those feelings properly. And I don't know why, I can't really explain it too well, but I choose not to use my support system, and I, lash out in an angry way. It's just, it's a struggle. It's still a struggle. I'm light years ahead where you and I last spoke a year ago, but the journey is still ongoing.
Yeah. Well, I want to dive in. So let's talk about, and I mean, I think one of the keys to life, at least, is realizing that you're never going to be perfect. So
Right.
you're still going to have these moments, but let's talk about how you're currently coping with each of these things. So the flashbacks, when you have those moments of things she said or feelings that sort of
Right.
bubble up that were remind you of the past. How do you deal with that now? What are you doing?
Usually it's usually one of three things. If I have the time, I will go to the gym. I will get a good lift in or a good walk, something, physically let those emotions out.
No.
Um, Another thing then I will do is I will go to my support system. Now I have, in my opinion, four people that are in my support system, as I call it. Depending on the subject, I'll go to my parents. I am close with my parents. I'm very
Nice.
fortunate that I am. So I'll go to them. Um, if they're not available, I will go to my girlfriend, because when I was going through everything I was going through, my girlfriend, she was my best friend at the time. So as I was going through all those things and problems with my ex-wife, she was a sounding board, and she still remains, as my sounding board. And then if she's not available, I'll usually engage in my hobbies, which, whether if it's, diving into my comic books, playing a video game or something,
Sure.
going for a walk.
Yeah.
Then there's one more category, the group.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be where I am today without what you created and the core group of us that have been there since the beginning. Because I've gone to you at times, I've gone to David, I've gone to a few other people that have been there since the beginning. But usually one of those four things I'll do. And when those feelings come, they don't go away just like that.
No.
They
No.
don't.
No.
I, one thing I critique myself on is it takes a while for me to get rid of that feeling. And I
Mhm.
feel like I know some people that can bounce back so quick, and
Mm.
I'm not one of those people,
Yeah.
unfortunately.
Yeah.
I'll spend a good half a day or a whole day or more in that mood, so
Yep.
to speak. It takes me a minute,
Yeah. Yeah.
but it sucks. But knowing what I know now and having those support systems, whether if it's the hobbies or the people or the activity,
Yeah.
it's helped me come a long way.
Yeah. Well, so let's talk, and they're all, and you're right. And I think, one, I relate. There are times when it's tough to get me out of a certain headspace. It's difficult. And it's
Yeah,
difficult for all of us, I think. It
absolutely.
definitely takes diligence and just, but it's not easy, man. Like, and
No,
sometimes you feel like you're 7 steps backwards, and you're not, but that's what it feels like.
yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
but let's move on to the next thing, confidence. Sometimes you don't feel so good about yourself. And I think all of us humans can relate to that one.
Yeah,
Only truly true narcissists walk around thinking they're the greatest thing since sliced bread, I think.
right.
So I think
Absolutely.
we all struggle with confidence. So what do you do in those moments when you're not feeling so good about Anthony?
Well, okay, so this might sound like a simple thing, but this was something that was suggested to me by my counselor, and I do it. I constantly lie to myself to the point where that lie turns into a truth.
Mm,
So if I'm feeling like I'm not good enough, if I'm not worthy enough, whatever you want to say,
mhm,
I will say to myself repeatedly, if I have to, for days on end, I am good enough. I am worth it. I am, I can be loved, whatever it is that I'm feeling.
yep.
And I will literally, if I have to, I will say that hundreds of times for days on end until I sort of trick my brain, so to speak, to believing that that is true.
Yeah,
And it sounds so simple,
it does,
but
but it does work.
it does,
Yeah,
and it took me a long time to really like accept that as like a method to use. And
yeah,
but I'll tell you, like, at least for me in my own experience, I've done that countless times now, and I think the longest I went was like a week and a half of telling myself that. But eventually, like the wheels were in motion, and it did turn.
yeah,
I don't find myself doing it as much as I used to, knock on wood, but
yeah.
every once in a while, I still got to do it. But that's the big thing that I do.
Yeah, oh, that's a great one. It's a point that I try to make all the time is at least be mindful of your negative self-talk, and you're clearly aware of it. That's step one,
Right.
and then you're able to change it. And it does take time, man. It does take practice and diligence. This shit is hard, man.
Sure.
It's hard to be, at least to correct some of the things that were sort of structurally deficient about us, right? Things since childhood, that things that like, we didn't get what we needed for whatever reason. And I'm not trying to throw anyone under the bus or blame parents, yours, mine, whatever. I mean, I can blame mine all day long, but there are certain things that were sort of learned and you have to unlearn them, but it ain't easy, especially if like I said, that sort of that foundation is the way I always try to look at it. That's stuff that's deep rooted. You can't, I mean, and if you think about like, when did you like start therapy or start self-reflection, all that kind of stuff, you're probably what, 30s, 40s, whatever. Like that's a long time, even if 20s, 25, whatever. I mean, it's a long time of not speaking to yourself the way you should be. So it takes fucking practice.
Well, and I'm glad you brought that up, because the month that I filed for my divorce, December of 2019, that same month is when I started seeing my counselor, Veronica. And, so I realistically, I'll say from like the ages of like, I don't know, like 10 to 29. So we're talking like 19 years of, in my opinion, not doing things right. And then I'm trying to undo 19 years of bad thought processes and bad habits and just a bad headspace. And, I'm a little over 2 years in, and I've done a good job. Don't get me wrong. Like I can honestly say I like who I am today. I like the person that I see now, but the work isn't done.
No.
It's not done. And someone like in my position, 2 years in, if I were to ever say, "Oh, the work is done," I'd slap myself and be like, "No, you're a freaking idiot!" Like, no, this isn't done.
Yeah, agreed.
It's a lot of work.
Yeah, it is. I don't think it ever ends, honestly. I think you always have to be kind of mindful of where you're at and be vigilant. And I think it gets easier probably, but then life throws curves at you, man. Like you could be. I hear it all the time. I see it all the time. Oh, I thought I was doing so good, and then she knocked on the door and came in, and like I was right back where I started. And so I think sometimes we get to a space because we don't want to do, a lot of us don't, the work is hard, man. And so I think sometimes we get to the point where it's like, oh, I'm good, fuck all that stuff, I don't need therapy anymore. I've done this. I'm not trying to criticize anyone for anything I haven't.
No, I did too. At one point I did. I thought I was okay and I didn't need my counselor anymore. And then I went a period about 2 months. And in 2 months, it felt like it was just a downhill roller coaster. And then I came basically crawling back to my counselor, and I'm like, I need to see you again. And thankfully she took me back with wide open arms, no problem. But, I've told people this, and I mean it, I'm a sheriff deputy. I've seen a lot of bad shit. Unfortunately, I've dealt with a lot of bad shit, but my divorce, although it was cordial in a sense, and, everything went by quick, even a cordial divorce, this was still the most traumatic thing I've ever been through in my entire life. The most traumatic. And I'm still, in a lot of ways, I'm mourning, I guess, and I'm trying to heal still.
Yeah. And it takes time, and timetables can be thrown out the fucking window. This next one, I'm really curious to dive into this one with you, because I am not in a relationship. Someday perhaps I will be. But I worry myself about being able to love the same way or better or differently, but still to be vulnerable, to be open, to not constantly waiting for the other fucking shoe to drop, so to speak. So what do you do in those moments when you're like, love is bullshit, and this is we're all fucked and doomed? Like, what do you do in those moments when you're having some of those thoughts?
Okay, so this might sound bad, I don't know, but when I'm having those moments where I'm like, okay, like the Hallmark, fuck Hallmark, the love is bullshit, it's not happening, it's not for me. I need to be alone in those moments. I need to be. So actually what I've done the past couple times, I've gotten in my car, I've shut my cell phone off, I've shut every electronic off, and I go to a quiet place. And I have a couple quiet places in mind where I live, usually it's like a park, or there's a boardwalk in my city that I'll usually walk. It's like a mile long boardwalk, but I get into basically like a nice secluded place. And this can be dangerous at times for some people, but I need to be alone in my thoughts.
Right.
I need to be alone. I need to process. I need to think. I need to systematically like look at one issue at a time and be like, okay, what is this? What does this mean? Why am I feeling this way?
Yeah.
And I'll do it all night if I have to. You know, the last time this happened, it was in the summer. I went down to my to the boardwalk in my hometown. I was there at 3 in the afternoon, and I didn't get back in my car till 9:30 at night.
Wow.
And I mean, I'm talking hours on end, no exaggeration, where I was literally just analyzing one thing at a time and trying to figure out what made sense and if what I was feeling made sense.
Yeah.
Now, the reason why I say it's dangerous though is, you know, sometimes we get deep in thought and we go a little too deep.
Mhm.
And to me, that's dangerous because the deeper you go, those feelings can be conflicted. You know, you can cross wire stuff, and then what started as a good thing, a good intention, can turn bad, so to speak.
Yeah.
But you know, that's what I do, where I kind of say, you know, fuck the world, and I shut everything down. I have no communication with anybody else, and I just need to sort this out on my own.
Yeah.
You know, and my girlfriend, you know, God bless her, I love her to death, but the first few times I did that on her, she didn't understand.
Yeah.
You know, she didn't understand why I was doing this. But you know, I try to be honest with her, and I try to tell her how I feel when everything's said and done. And I tell her I don't expect you to understand, but this is, you know, this is my healing process. This is what I need to do. This is what works for me. And you know, you don't have to like it, you don't have to agree with it, but I hope that you can at least respect it.
Yeah, and I want to come back to that because that is huge, what you just described. But I don't want to derail us, so I'm writing it down.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
That's awesome to hear. Okay, so when you talk about the last one was sort of sometimes struggling to utilize your support system, and again,
Yeah,
I don't think this is anything that any of the men listening cannot relate to. I think we
yeah,
all have a real problem sometimes putting up our hand and going, man, I need some help, or man,
yeah,
this is a shitty day. Because sometimes I think this is what happens, and it's what happens to me sometimes. Sometimes I am doing so fucking good and I want to tell everybody. And I'm gonna
right,
tell you,
right,
hey guys, I'm doing great. Things are awesome. And then you're not,
yeah,
and you're like, oh my God, am I a fucking fraud? If I reach out and say, shit, I'm having a bad day, or people are gonna be like, oh, he's a fucking liar. He's never been
right,
good, or whatever. Like I worry about
right,
being a fraud. So that's why I struggle with it sometimes, even myself, someone who created a fucking support system. So I know the value, right? But I have
right.
struggled with it too. So what do you do in those moments? How do you talk yourself into doing what you know is the right thing to do?
Oh, okay. So this is a struggle because you know, we've talked about this in group, I don't know how many times, where unfortunately all of us in the group, we have all fallen trap to what society views what a man should be,
Yeah.
where we need to internalize our feelings. We never let them out. We never cry. Never let ourselves be vulnerable.
Yeah.
So I realized through counseling, that's what I did for years on end.
Yeah.
That is what I did. And I, like, metaphorically speaking, wore that mask where
Yeah.
I portrayed everything was fine, although I was hurting inside.
Yeah.
So we're talking almost 20 years of my life doing that.
Yeah.
So this might sound simple, I don't know, but I just I tell myself mentally I need to be vulnerable. I need to, no matter how bad I'm feeling, I need to go to someone or I need to go to something.
Yeah.
I need to take that mask off that I've been wearing for so long, and I need to go to that person or go to that thing and be like, I need help.
Yeah.
I need help because I am struggling and I don't know what to do, and I'm afraid of what's going to happen if I just sit there and do nothing.
Yeah.
And it's easier said than done, you know, because like I
Yeah.
just said, you know,
Yeah.
almost 20 years of my life I did
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
And it took a divorce for me to no longer do that.
Yeah.
But every once in a while, you know, old habits are hard to break. I put on that mask
Yeah.
every once in a while. And then it might take me a little bit, but then I'll catch myself now and I'll be like, okay, I need to take this mask off
Yeah.
because I'm not okay.
Yeah.
You know, and
Yeah.
honestly, what helps for me, back when this group first started, you know, we would talk about not being a statistic.
Yeah.
You know, and I can honestly say I've never had, throughout this experience, I've never had suicidal thoughts, but I've had deep, depressing, dark thoughts.
Yeah.
And I guess I kind of use it as a motivating factor on top of everything else I said, where
Sure.
I don't want to be like that again. because when I have those good moments, when I am enjoying life and I love the person that I am, obviously I want to live in those feelings for as long as I can. And, it seems like everything's great in the world when you're feeling that way.
Yeah.
And then when I'm sad, I'm at a point now where I use those happy feelings as like a motivational factor. Like, okay, I need to get back to this point. So I need to be vulnerable right now. I need to go to someone, or I need to engage in any of like my physical hobbies, and I need to let this out. Because if I don't, I know bad shit's gonna happen.
Yeah. Well, that's it's a great point, and I think it's an awesome strategy. Avoiding pain is never a bad thing.
Yeah. But it's hard though. It's easier said than
Oh,
done.
yeah. Well, and so like you said, it's a learned behavior. It's to stay in that way, right? No, I'm
Yeah.
fine. Let me wear this mask. I'm fine. It'll be fine.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
it's much easier to do that than to open, especially as a man, to be vulnerable. Hey guys, I'm feeling like a piece of shit today. Like
Yeah.
I have no hope, and like that shit is hard, man. So when you do it, and I've seen you do it, I've been fortunate to see it,
Yeah.
lucky to see it. I always appreciate it and know it, and when anyone does it, but
Right.
certainly, you and I have known each other a while now, and I appreciate your,
Yeah.
everything you've done in terms of not only being and doing the podcast, but being involved in a group. um
Right.
I try to give that support like as quick as I possibly can, because I know how difficult it is to open up and be like, I'm hurting. So I
It,
love you for doing it, man. It's not
no, I
easy
love
to
you
do.
too, brother.
Yeah,
I love
man.
you too, brother. And it's a hard thing to do for men to open up to
It
each other, to
is.
be vulnerable to each other.
Yep.
Like I first of all, like what I'm about to say, like I love my father to death. I just want to say that first. I love my father to death. I have a great relationship with him. But I can remember growing up as a kid where something would upset me, whether if it was something very little and petty or
Right.
something huge. And my dad, being a sheriff deputy for over 30 years of his life, he raised me kind of in a paramilitary type way. So then I would always hear, Anthony, why are you being so sensitive? Stop that.
Yeah.
Stop crying. Stop what you're doing. Just suck it up.
Yeah.
And you think, and I'm sure, like, I'm not trying to blame him, but
No, it's
you know,
reality.
it is, and he probably thought he wasn't doing anything. But as a
100%.
child, when your mind is like a sponge and you're
Yep.
absorbing everything,
Yep.
that sticks with you somewhere in the brain.
Oh
And
yeah.
and then when I'm going through everything I was going through with my ex-wife, and I didn't know how to deal with everything, I innocently thought of those times.
Yeah.
And then, it felt like a mask on top of another, on top of another. And then I just
Yep.
had layers of mask
Yep.
that, I eventually had to peel off. But it's hard to be vulnerable.
Yeah.
It really is. But, I think if there's one thing out of this whole pandemic that has brought something good to light, is mental health.
Yes. Yeah,
And
100%. Yeah.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So let's shift a little bit and let's move
Okay.
into, and we probably covered some of this, but I really want to get some of the things you've learned along the way. This is something we touched on in the first one, but I definitely want to, sort of see where you're at
Yeah.
now in terms of what
Yeah.
lessons have you learned, throughout the process.
Okay. So, about a month ago, I just want to start off with this. I told you I switched to another sheriff department. I started a new job.
Yep.
And at my swearing in ceremony, my new sheriff said something, and I don't know if it was just the occasion or the timing or the way that he said this, but it was something that stuck with me. And I have it written down here. He said, and I quote, "You grow the most in life when you're uncomfortable." And for some reason that really stuck with me, because I'm looking back at my life and I'm saying to myself, okay, the divorce, obviously a very uncomfortable, traumatic experience. But then, I look at everything that's happened now, and I think a divorce, if you allow it, it can bring some very positive and uplifting changes to your life. You can look at yourself spiritually, physically, emotionally,
Yep.
and you can find out, what you want to change, what your weaknesses are, and what your strongest traits are about your life. And if there's one, first of all, the biggest thing I've learned is this can be a positive experience if you let it be. It doesn't have to destroy you. It doesn't have to define you in a negative way. Whether if you were on the receiving end of the divorce or if you were the one that filed, you can let this change you for the better. And you're going to go through hell. You're going to go through rough times. You're going to be at the bottom. Just when you think you couldn't get any more at the bottom, you go down even lower. But it can be an uplifting experience. But I feel like, you have to like arms wide open. You have to like let it in. You have to hug it. You have to embrace it.
Yep.
And it's not easy to do. But, someone who's done this, who's been through this journey now for a little over 2 years, it can be a good thing. It is a blessing in disguise. It can be. That's definitely the biggest thing that I've learned throughout all of this. But, another thing I've learned is, love, the whole subject of love, what I'm learning through my relationship with my girlfriend. It's not easy. It's hard. It's a balancing act. It requires you putting in so much and it requires the other person putting in so much. But I feel like it can be achieved. Although, like I'm still learning how to balance life. I'm still learning how to balance love. You can build a solid foundation there. You can. It is possible. And when you have a crack in that foundation, you go to work and you repair that crack and you try to learn what it is you were doing wrong. But in my own opinion, through my own experience, I believe it can be done. It can. Yeah. And if you would have asked me this a little over 2 years ago, I would have said, "Go fuck yourself." Love doesn't exist. Everyone's high if they're thinking love is a real thing. That's bullshit. But I can't describe what love is, but I can tell you like I'm feeling it and I'm seeing the positivity from it, which is great. But I'm not going to lie to anybody listening to this. There's some dark moments with it too.
Sure,
there is. And I don't know if I ever want to get married again. I don't know if I ever want to go down that path. But another thing I've learned too is love doesn't have to be defined by a piece of paper, so to speak.
Yeah.
Like one thing I've said over and over again in group, like I want that Kurt Russell and Goldie Hawn type relationship.
Yeah.
Those two have been together for decades, but they've never been married for their own reasons. And they're, to me, like one of the happiest couples in Hollywood. They're doing something right.
Yeah. Yeah. I think there's definitely that pressure from society to certainly to be with somebody. I get it all the time.
Yeah.
And then of course, the marriage thing. And and people say, well, men get screwed and divorced, and so then why get married? And there's all these things about how men are constantly getting fucked over, and that's a whole other conversation. But which I kind of, that could take us down a rabbit hole. But I think you don't have to, if you want to, sure. I mean, I think as a man, protect yourself. I think with the prenup. But I don't think you have to, and I'm curious. Have you felt any pressure from your girlfriend? Have you broached this subject with her? Has she said how she feels about this thing?
Yeah. All right. So we have talked about it, and where we're at right now, we have this mantra or this saying, so to speak, that we say to each other, and it's go with the flow. Yeah. Like we're at the point where whatever happens, we just want to let it happen naturally. We don't want things to be forced. We don't want to do something based on somebody else's expectation. We want to build our own foundation with nobody else trying to help us. We want to build something that's real and honest and, just beautiful, so to speak. Now we have said to each other, we want to be together for the long term, but we don't want to force anything. So she's 31, I'm 31. If we're together for another 10 years, but we get married at that point, then okay, cool, whatever. It was meant to happen then.
Sure.
But or if we never get married, but we're still together, that's fine. We're not forcing anything.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome. That's awesome that you can have that conversation. And that brings me to a point that I caught earlier about how you communicated with your girlfriend about this is how I cope in this way. Sometimes I disappear. I gotta say, man, that's awesome that you can do that she is receptive to that. I think someone who has been hurt in a relationship, having the vulnerability to say, hey, this is how I'm coping because right now I'm hurting for X, Y, or Z. Might not have nothing to do with her, might have something to do with her, whatever, but you're able to communicate that. I think that's That's pretty fucking awesome. Is that something you guys have worked at, or did it sort of happen like sort of right off the bat?
Oh no, it's something we worked at, because the very first time that I did that, and I don't blame her for this. I shut everything off. I did my thing. It was like for a couple hours that first time. So I turned my phone back on, and I had like 15 missed calls from her and like 3 voicemails, because I did it at a random time and she didn't
Yeah,
know. So she
sure.
naturally thought like something bad happened. So I called her back, and if like I didn't ask chewing, but I deserved it. I'm not gonna lie to you, I did.
Right.
Uh, but once she calmed down and I explained to her like, hey, this is how I was feeling and this is what I felt was right, her words were, okay, I respect that. As long as you're not doing anything to hurt yourself in any type of way,
Yeah.
I will respect that. But
Mm.
she said, just please let me know the next time you're going to do that, so I don't think for the worst.
Oh, that's awesome, man.
And,
Beautiful.
and I, yeah, it is. And I
Yeah.
told her, okay, fine. I said, I can do that. But I said, as soon as I let you know, I'm shutting my phone off and I can't tell you when you're going to hear from me.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's worked ever since. So something must be going right. I'm not sure, but something.
Well, I think it's beautiful. It's amazing that you're able to do that. And she was receptive of it and said, okay, cool, but can you do this for me? And again, you're
Right.
reciprocal and said, sure, I can do it, because sometimes hurt people. So if she was hurt by that, then she starts attacking you, and then you attack.
Right.
That's what typically happens, because no one has real, raw, honest fucking conversations. In
Yeah.
general, I'm generalizing, but I mean,
Yeah.
those of us that have been divorced, there's a fucking reason for it. At least partially, it was we couldn't fucking communicate. So
Right.
I think it's fucking awesome that you're able to do that. That
Well, yeah.
she is able to do that.
It goes back to my balancing thing, she's got to put in so much and I got to put in so much to make everything level, and sometimes we'll say to each other, okay, well, right now I got to put in the extra work. I'm putting in 70%, you're putting in 30, but
Right.
let's get back to that 50-50 point eventually.
Yeah.
And it's a balancing act. It is. And we've worked at it and we've had good times and bad, but she's willing to work with me. I'm willing to work with her, and I can't ask for anything more than that.
Yeah. Now, and it's just in terms, and I'm curious, this is a bit of a rabbit hole. I don't want to go down too far. It's your personal life, but I'm just curious. Do you guys do any sort of like weekly check-ins, monthly, or is there like a standing, like, I don't know, way that you guys will handle things in terms of like, how are you really doing? Or is there any things that you practice besides this clearly open and honest communication? There are other things that you do that have been helpful?
So, like nothing's set in stone, but my girlfriend and I know each other pretty well, to the point where we can kind of detect where, like, even if
Mm,
our normal voice is off like a certain decibel or whatever you want to call it,
right.
we know like something's up with that person.
Yeah.
And then we've kind of said to each other, okay, like when we know something's wrong, and if the other person's asking, be honest, don't hide anything,
Yeah.
let it out, even if it's hurtful, let it out. We need to talk about things before it just eats away at the other person, and then, they explode basically.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's nothing set in stone, but again,
Huh.
that just comes from knowing the other person for a long time and
Yeah.
knowing how they are.
Yeah.
But that's usually what we do. So I guess it just goes to being honest with each other. Just
Yeah.
ask for honesty and hoping that you're getting honesty back in return.
Yeah. Well, that's what you need on, it's a key, for sure. It's,
Yeah.
if you don't have that, the foundation it can crumble pretty quickly, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And her and we've been together for almost 2 years now, and we've built a good foundation.
Yeah.
And all the work that we put in individually and together as a team, so to speak, we don't want that to crack. We don't want a bad foundation. We want to keep it upright. We want to keep it strong. And she has to remind me of that sometimes, and I have to remind her of that sometimes. More so, she's reminding me. But
Right.
it's a teamwork thing. It is.
Yeah, for
You
sure.
know?
Well, I applaud you for doing this initially. Again, not everyone can be vulnerable and open.
Right.
I thank you for that, and then for
Of
coming
course.
back.
No, absolutely.
It's awesome to sort of get an update and see where you're at. I mean, I know because we've been in touch, but
Right.
it's nice to bring it back around, and I'm sure that we will do it again because life goes on and challenges remain, and And,
Yeah.
who knows what the future would hold. But as I do every time with the last question, and including the first time that we did this, what words of wisdom would you impart to a man that has just started this shitty journey?
Well, all right. So I got a few points here. First one being, don't resort to drugs, alcohol, or pornography.
Yes. Yeah.
Don't do it. I've seen some people in my own personal life, men who have gone through some pretty nasty divorces, and then they're hitting the bottle, or they're hitting the pills, or the pornography, and it's just self-destructive behavior. And it sucks because most of the time you see these men, they were good men before, and then they go through that traumatic experience, and then it seems like they're forever changed. So first thing I definitely want to say is, don't go to the drugs, the alcohol, or pornography.
Yeah.
And then it leads into my next thing of, don't hold your emotions in. Find a way to let them out constructively or productively, or in a productive way.
Yeah.
Find a person to talk to or a hobby to engage in, and just make sure you do it every single time.
Yeah.
Make it a habit. Next thing I want to say, I'm sure a lot of men who are starting this journey that might listen to this episode, you're not worthless. You are worthy of love. You are worthy of a beautiful connection with somebody. In my opinion, it's out there. It's just, it's hard to find. It's hard to find because there's so many things contributing to society and what we think love should be. And so it's hard, but it is out there. Next thing I want to say is, be selfish and make yourself the number one priority. Never put anybody above yourself. I'm not a parent, so I would imagine maybe, put your kids in front of yourself, but other than that, always put yourself first. Be selfish at times. You only have one go at this thing called life, and you got to experience it the best you can. You have to. And this is, I guess, something that I believe should happen, but you're starting your journey now, but when you're at the point where maybe I am, or like where Chris is in group, or yourself, or anybody else, try to be like a beacon of hope for someone. Try to impart your wisdom on somebody else, because I can remember how lost I felt when I started this. I'm sure you can remember how lost you felt.
Oh yeah.
Or you don't know what to do. You feel like every step you take is the wrong direction. So when you're further down that journey, try to help a fellow brother out.
Yeah.
Try to guide them in the right direction, because the worst thing I don't want to see is somebody become a statistic.
Amen. Well, Anthony, I want to thank you, brother. This was, man, this is awesome. It's very easy for me to say that I love you, man.
I love you too, brother.
I appreciate you. I'm thankful for you. And I admire your ability to be vulnerable in a world where men aren't supposed to be. So thank you, brother. I appreciate it.
No, thank you. And honestly, and I mean this from the bottom of my heart, if it wasn't for meeting you in this group and how much, how big it's gotten now, I don't know where I'd be without this either. I don't, to be in a network full of men who are either becoming vulnerable or learning to become vulnerable. It's a beautiful thing to be a part of. It really is. And as much as you appreciate me, I appreciate you just as much.
Well, thanks, man.
Thank you.
Again, thanks for doing this, brother. I'm sure we will do it again.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Yep. Take care.
Thank you so much for watching and or listening. Thank you to Nick Coyle and Lifer for allowing me to use their song, Born Again, which you're hearing now and at the intro to the podcast. Thank you to Justin Delahanty and all of my brothers at the Alpha Code. Please visit the website, risingphoenixpodcast.com, to connect with me and other like-minded men who are looking to thrive and grow after their divorce. And remember to surround yourself with people who add value to your life, who challenge you to be greater than you were yesterday, who sprinkle magic into your existence like you to theirs. Life is not to be done alone. Find your tribe.